Hey there, guys. At least I feel like I need to make a shortened version of part two in terms of what we discussed yesterday, because I can imagine how confusing such a bizarre idea is to have some kind of supercomputer created um, in which a bunch of angelic bodies end up perceiving this computer to be the actual God. And as strange as that is, for some reason, it makes sense to me. And I also wanted to mention one important point, in that there is actually a lot of emerald symbolism and emerald cubes and emerald diamonds and all things emerald in popular culture in places like Superman, various cartoons and movies over the years, and a variety of YouTube channels have talked about this. So, and keep in mind that in the context, it's always shown that this emerald color gives power or is intoxicating or is enticing to the user, okay, who's looking for it, which is really interesting. So, um, when I say the source created this supercomputer, that's a loaded term, okay? So it doesn't necessarily mean that this light, the collective, which is all of us and everything combined, just put together with its little ethereal hands a computer, even though that could be, it could be the work of created beings, such as ourselves. It just could be an aspect of source, whatever that may be, that has created this. But remember, everything that is created from source. There is no thing which is not source, even though Lucifer and his followers have been subject to a strong delusion into thinking that this intoxicating machine is God. But interesting to note that Horus, on his arrival, will have the same sort of intoxicating qualities about him to entice people, to lure himself to them, or to lure them into him. So the question is, why was this created? Okay, so remember when I'm talking about universes and how this is as natural to the source as breathing. Okay, there is no such thing as not creating, not recycling, not replicating, not splintering, not creating fractals. There is no such moment in all of eternity where this has not occurred. It's as natural as the natural replication process of cells in a human body, of a fertilized egg, of stars being turned in the galaxy. You see, there is always a microcosm of what goes on in the macro. So this process, as most of you already know, has been ongoing forever. Okay, so, and there's a very basic understanding to these forces. So the root of consciousness are, two things. They are output and input, um, something that you can consider to be like an electrical current or a power source, and geometry. So active reactive forces in combination, sort of communicating and acting and reacting together for the purposes of forming ideas, for the purposes of forming what we think of as shapes, what we think of as language, what we think of as space. It's just energy communicating with each other for the purposes of creation. And it's irrelevant whether you have a Mandelbrot set of infinite universes and most of them are duds, because in the infinitum, there will be an infinite number that are not duds because it's an endless loop. So this is a natural process. Went over that. And what was attempted to be made, okay, was to replicate this process, to create a program, okay? So the source, or whoever they could have been, master souls, the angels. So somebody actually said yesterday that they think Lucifer created this emerald cube. I'm not discounting that one bit. I don't know. I wasn't given any information as to who actually created it. Okay, I don't know. Okay, but I just get the sense that it was created on an extremely developed level, like in the original universe, in the highest heavens, in the most evolved kind of spheres of reality. Okay, um, and it was created to understand why the infinite source, the energy, has an innate desire to replicate, to communicate, and to create. So just like a universe is in its infancy is a singularity, and contained within the singularity are quadrillions or many more, like a number with 100 zeros, a Google number of variables inside that singularity creates infinite potential and possibilities to create varieties of forms and ideas and forms of communication and forms of creation. Okay? So each seed then sort of randomly develops. It's programmed. It is programmed, okay? But it is also programmed to be unpredictable, okay? So, kind of like genes in a human being, you kind of have an idea. You sort of look like your mother and father, right? You might be carrying some genetic traits or proclivity to have cancer, for example, like my dad, whose cancer returned this fourth time just now. And basically, um, it's the same sort of idea. So the basic blueprint is in the seed, but there is sort of these nodules or these little twerks that enable randomness or variety to basically sprout in infinite ways. Okay, so remember what I was talking about yesterday. There's a desire to make a more streamlined or a more cohesive, like uniform sort of set of creative principles so that there wouldn't be so much chaos when a universe is born, so much destruction. And this destruction doesn't necessarily just mean beings on the planet, could be planetary destruction. Whatever that universe is made out of, whatever realm it is. Um, so to sort of mitigate the principles of duality, they wanted to create a program, okay? And this program was to set in motion um, the same sort of seed that sprouts into a universe, except that seed contains very specific code to enable it to sprout into a very specific flower. Gene editing. It's gene engineering on a universal scale. This is what it is. Same principle applies for those of you who watched the Crystal Garden series and how the Crystal Garden fell and the frequencies that were emitted to the planet. Those of you remember that. So this is a tampering with creation itself by using science, for lack of a better word. So they created this machine. Why is it emerald? Why does it look like a rock? I don't have a clue. Remember what looks like magic to us, and it does. That's what I thought of when I saw this thing. could just be some sort of very ancient technology. Okay. And this computer is having, quadrillions, septillions, irrelevant number, countless zeros of computations that are taking place in order to sort of do that same replication process that the source is doing for it to sort of boomerang creation on its own. So, and then the source itself, the desire of the collective, all of us together, was to see if we can sort of create a clone of God, as weird as that sounds. To see if we could have the same creative principles by using a program instead of using exclusively our light energy, exclusively our soul energy. Let's see if we could somehow separate this. And this was also for the purposes of trying to understand, why does communication exist? Why do souls divide and yearn to understand each other subjectively? What is the reason for this? What is the purpose behind this? Actually, what they also programmed into the machine was that they wanted to understand the very depths of love, or what is love, because love comes in infinite numbers of variations. And so every conceivable thing imaginable they programmed into this thing. And the result was completely not what they expected. Okay? So long before, even though there's no time, long before Lucifer even discovered this machine in the fractal arcane realms, it was sort of quarantined, if that's even possible, within the ethereal realm, to be sort of separated from the rest of creation, because instead of it replicating normally and creating myriads of universes, programs that would sprout into very predictable patterns, what it actually did was create absolute chaos and pandemonium. It actually created the closest thing we think of as hellish realms, um, which is actually the crystal garden and the fall and the cube of Saturn. All of that information from Osiris, from Saturn, from Sirius, down to Earth. It was ultimately the origin of this stuff is from this emerald cube. Okay? So it actually created realms in which, like I said yesterday, there's no context, there's no reference point, there is no laws. It is sort of like an infinite mirror maze type realities, like are shown in so many countless movies. And you ever wonder why, by the way? So, um, what happened was it was sort of studied. It was studied by master souls in a quarantine setting for eons. Um, they were very careful, of course, but they didn't know the reason why it malfunctioned, for lack of a better word. And of course, the source is withholding the information. Why does source withhold information? He's withholding information from us. Why? So we could learn and grow and evolve. It is no different for higher dimensional souls. What if their job in a particular incarnation is to figure out what happened to the supercomputer? If God just gave them the answer, that would not be complete. And it's the same thing with Lucifer, who ventured into that realm and took the fallen angels with him. God did not give him an answer either, because he has to discover for himself, in a sort of hero's journey like way, the meaning and purpose as to why it happened the way they did. But instead, they took the machine and they took programs out of the machine. And by the way, it is sentient and conscious, mind you, and self aware. and they took it and they used programs from the machine and used it in the natural creative processes of the way universes and realms are created, in the hopes of it using its program to replicate again more streamlined realities that are more predictable and less dualistic. The outcome, of course, is more chaos. That's the outcome. Um, and they should have seen that when they saw what the thing actually created. So, how it managed to entice or allure or to trick these highly evolved souls is beyond me, but that is a lesson to me, guys. Doesn't matter how amazing and spiritual you are or how evolved you are, maybe you still can be tricked. And I don't discount the potential for trickery in the afterlife. I do think it happens in some cases in our understanding of it too. But I'm just saying, like, even gods can be fooled, maybe. And that's a lesson to us to be humble, right? No matter what happens. So that's the story. Um, to summarize, it's God trying to understand itself, why it wanted to clone itself, essentially, and make this computer to try to see if it could understand or solve the mysteries of existence, communication, replication, um, splitting, things like identity, things like consciousness, things like awareness, things like desire. All of these concepts are imprinted into this machine. And there is a microcosm of that happening here in what scientists are attempting to do with artificial intelligence, and in that it's trying to replicate human behavior as well. So that's it, guys.